What's your favorite type of video game DLC? Are you someone who just wants a few extra maps and guns in the newest COD game? Do you like an entirely new area added to a game you love, which doesn't rock the boat but serves to extend your time in the game world? Maybe you just want a snazzy new skin or some badass horse armor. There's no getting around the fact that nowadays, downloadable content is just the norm. Once upon a time, DLC seemed to be something that developers made because they had a good idea late into, or even after, development and release. But in 2020, it seems to be just an accepted practice that DLC is planned alongside a base game's development cycle, and in some shadier cases, is even cut from the base game purely for later release. It can come in many shapes and sizes, from the not-so-humble microtransaction to the fully fledged 30-hour additional campaign. And because of this, realistically, you can't compare and contrast every piece of DLC, but that doesn't stop you from picking a favourite. Now, there's no getting around the fact that personal choice is always going to be an element in choosing the best of, well, anything. If you don't like Skyrim, then you're not very likely to get a kick out of any of its DLC. Equally, no one has played every single video game, though believe me, we've tried. As such, when I say I think Undead Nightmare might be the best piece of downloadable content ever released for a video game, you're more than justified in thinking to yourself, yeah, so what? For those unaware, Undead Nightmare was released on October 26, 2010, as an expansion for Rockstar's Western triumph, Red Dead Redemption, which itself had only been released 5 months prior. Now, I should probably get it out of the way that, until a few years ago, Red Dead Redemption was my favourite video game ever. In the time since its release, I've only ever considered a handful of games to potentially be better than it, and only one game has truly surpassed it in my eyes. Funnily enough, its 2018 sequel, Red Dead Redemption 2. As such, perhaps my own bias leads me to the conclusion I've put forward. There is another piece of DLC I've played very recently that I would definitely put in contention, but we'll come to that a bit later. So what is it about Undead Nightmare that really sets it above everything else then? Well, my first point would be that it feels like an entirely separate game and story, which has been built on top of the already existing Red Dead Redemption. It's not a new map, and it has a lot of the same characters, so there's an immediate familiarity to proceedings. The biggest difference, of course, is that instead of outlaws and cougars, your biggest worry is a zombie apocalypse, which leads to towns and cities full of zombies, survivors on the roadside in dire need of assistance, and fictional and fantastical creatures, such as Bigfoot and the 4 horses of the bloody apocalypse, all running around the world for you to deal with. To further build upon this, it's worth pointing out that the expansion could also be bought and played as an entirely separate and standalone game. Yeah, theoretically, there could be people out there who bought Undead Nightmare who never even played a second of the base game. It's also true that there could be people out there who played the DLC and loved it, while having no affinity towards Red Dead Redemption itself. Madness! My second point is this. Red Dead Redemption already had the potential to be really creepy, and it definitely made us feel uneasy at times, even if it chose not to capitalize on these moments very frequently. A slight musical cue while wandering the desert, the sound of wolves howling in the night, or even something as simple as John Marston wondering what happened here upon discovering an abandoned location on his travels. There are many who genuinely believe the town of Tumbleweed to be haunted to this day, even though the evidence doesn't particularly support it. I mean, there's even a random event where a nun can appear out of nowhere and just walk towards you unwaveringly. Depending where you are and how you react, this alone can feel genuinely terrifying. But to be fair to the nun, she just wants to thank you for your kind-hearted charity at an earlier point in the game. But blimey, please go about it in a less ominous way next time. Gosh. Perhaps then, plonking zombies and monsters and an internal darkness on the game was inevitable and almost feels right. There are graveyards scattered across the western landscape which don't serve a massive purpose in the base game, yet in Undead Nightmare, they become focal points for zombie activities. Towns and cities become overrun with the undead too, which you're gonna have to clear out if you want to feel safe. contrasted with the feeling of excitement of finding a new town in the base game. In the expansion, you feel anxiety at what you're getting yourself into. As previously mentioned, animals like bears and cougars, which already present a terror factor in the base game, return as zombified versions of themselves, and manage to be just as scary when they manage to creep up on you unawares. Of course, it's probably worth taking a look at a couple of the expansion's drawbacks too. At the time of the DLC's release, it's fair to say zombies were already starting to feel quite tired as a horror entity. In 2020, it feels even more the case that zombies are greeted with a collective eye roll from the majority. I'll throw my hands up and say, I hate zombies. I think they're pretty boring, and while I do love the changing gameplay they bring and do find them at times genuinely creepy, I largely found them pretty dull. Not everyone does, of course, and to be honest, I don't think there's anything that would have fit quite as neatly as them, especially in the vast numbers and the frequency in which they appear. Truth be told, it's also worth pointing out that as fun and exciting as the gameplay is when you first pick up Undead Nightmare, it can run a little stale by the time the game is over. The gunplay remains brilliant, and a much higher impetus is placed on getting headshots, but there's only so many times you can clear a new town of the undead before it starts to get a little samey. It's also true that both the main and side quests aren't as long or varied as you might be used to from the base game, and so the monotony can potentially set in pretty quickly. Then again, another way of looking at it is that the game doesn't outstay its welcome, and its shorter runtime lends itself far better to the lack of variety. All in all though, I still think Undead Nightmare holds the crown for me. There's almost definitely an element of nostalgia attached to it nowadays, but even stripping that away shows an expansion that just really works and feels fun to play. I mentioned earlier in this video that I've recently played a DLC which may equal or even surpass this one. This would be the Blood and Wine DLC from 2015's The Witcher 3, a game that I didn't get round to until earlier this year and am now completely enamored with. I won't go into it too much, but this was a huge expansion, adding hours of new content from quest lines to monsters, and all set within a huge new area. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only other DLC that even comes close to Undead Nightmare. But what did you think of Undead Nightmare? Do you agree that it's one of the best pieces of video game DLC ever, or did it leave you underwhelmed? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more video game content every single week. See you next time.